So thank you everyone for attending our public information meeting today for Adams Lake and area residents. My name is Colton Davies. I'm the information officer for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District Emergency Operations Center. Today we're located in Kamloops. We're located in Tecumloops to Skrepnek, traditional territory situated within the unceded ancestral lands of Skrepnek Nation. It is Friday, August 25th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. We'll have several updates during this meeting from us, the TNRD, on recovery and support and emergency information. We'll have our TNRD Emergency Operations Center Director and our Recovery Manager. We also have several agencies here as well to provide updates, as we stated in the meeting notice. Ministry of Transportation, BC Hydro, and the BC Wildfire Service have joined us. We thank them very much for their time. Just some Zoom housekeeping. When you have a question to ask, we're going to leave questions until the end. I think we will leave all questions to the end, besides those for Mike McCulley and the BC Wildfire Service after their update, as Mike does have to leave at 2 p.m. In half an hour from now. So we'll get through Wildfire Service specific questions after Mike's update in just a few minutes. When you have a question, use the raise hand function. Once you've been called on, make sure to put it down. We'll be able to let you unmute your mic when you do go to ask a question. I'll also keep up with questions in the chat as well, which you have access to for our speakers. So that's our Zoom etiquette. We'll start with a quick statement from Electoral Area P, Rivers and Peaks Director, Lee Morris. Lee, if you wanted to unmute your mic, you're welcome to go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I could show my video as well for a moment. Thank you very much, Colton. So just a brief introduction. Myself, Lee Morris. I am the TNRD Director for Area P. I've been in the role just shy of a year at this point, and I just wanted to introduce myself and thank all of you, of course, to be on this, in particular our team at the TNRD who have pulled all this together, as well as an awful lot of others. A very, very, very difficult situation for everybody. So I am glad to be here to listen and to learn along with you today.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Director Morris. We'll get right into it from our presenters. I believe we were going to start with our Emergency Operations Center Director for the TNRD, Kevin Skrepnek. Kevin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Colton. I'm very cognizant that Mike does need to get out by 2, and that there's likely going to be some questions for the Wildfire Service. So I'll try to be fairly brief here. Yeah, so my name is Kevin Skrepnek. I'm the I'm the director of the Emergency Operations Center for the TNRD. And as Colton mentioned, we're speaking to you today from the unceded territory of the Tecumloops to Skrepnek. So I want to thank everyone for coming. There's no lack of things going on right now, both for our responding agencies that are here today, and of course for the folks who are directly impacted as well. It's been a pretty grueling few weeks here, especially since last Friday when a lot of this blew up. So I appreciate everyone taking the time. I appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this ongoing incident. This is going to be the first meeting of many. I realize there's some drawbacks to doing this online, but just logistically, given the fact that we still have an evacuation order in place, given that folks are fairly spread out, this was the best way to kind of get the ball rolling. But certainly we're going to be trying to keep the lines of communication open here going forward. I want to just really quickly share my screen here, and I know that there has been some confusion and some frustration, rightfully so, just around jurisdiction. And this is a very, very complicated part of the province in terms of local governments, First Nations. There's a lot of boundaries that kind of go all over the place here. So I just want to take a quick moment to go through that. Certainly, I know there's lots of folks tuned into the call from Columbia-Shuswap Regional District. That's great. Obviously, what's happening on either side of the boundary is impacting all of us, as well as from a number of the First Nations in the area too. So just scrolling out here. So This area, if you can see my cursor, is the boundary between the TNRD and the Columbia Shuswap. It doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense, I'll be frank. I certainly would have drawn it this way myself. So really the west side of Adams Lake, for the most part, until you get down to the park here, is in TNRD, as is the east side of Adams Lake up until almost the end of Rawson Road. The last property on Rawson for folks on the east side of the lake is actually in TNRD. Everything south of that is either in Columbia Shuswap or on Adams Lake IR1, which you can see here. Moving over to the west side of the lake, this is mainly TNRD until you get into the park. The mill itself, the Interfor mill, is actually part of the village of Chase. It's an annex of the village, so it is within the village boundaries, and they have a separate evacuation order. Continuing down, this kind of white area is TNRD. You'll see Little Shuswap IR number 1 here on the northeast end of the lake. That transitions back to TNRD over here, and then Adams Lake IR number 4, which is directly across the river from the village of Chase. On the south end here, this is actually a Adams Lake IR adjacent to the highway. That transitions to Little Shuswap IR number 2 on the south side of Little River, and then is actually back into TNRD. So Squilax Mountain and the Turtle Valley, those areas are in TNRD. Loken Bear Creek Road, most of the properties on Loken Bear Creek are in TNRD, but you can see there is a dividing line there before it reaches holding, and that's where it enters back into CSRD. That's a lot to take in, but I know we've had lots of calls from folks not knowing where to go to in terms of their local authority or their First Nation, so I just wanted to get that out right off the bat. So our role, and whereas Mike is going to be addressing the firefighting efforts, from the local government perspective, we are mainly here in terms of the evacuation alerts and orders. That's our responsibility. We do those in conjunction with BC Wildfire, typically at their recommendation, but it is going to be your First Nation or your local government that's actually going to be putting those in place. And then it's our responsibility as well to kind of maintain those areas and support the folks who have been displaced. So when you see security checkpoints, things like that, traffic control, that is typically either going to be your First Nation or local government, or potentially Ministry of Transportation that has those set up as well. So we're working hand in glove with those other agencies, but it is, it's going to be the local authority that's actually putting that evacuation order or alert in place. In terms of the current situation, before I hand it over to Mike here, so as it stands right now, no anticipated changes to the alerts or orders within the Thompson-Nicola Regional District side of the fire currently. We are hopeful that the Turtle Valley side, we can be looking to potentially get to scaling some of that back to an alert in the next few days, but given that we are seeing hot temperatures return, we are going to keep that order in place for the time being in kind of consultation with the wildfire service. For the area on the kind of southwest side of Adams Lake, south of the mill, obviously there's two main concerns there, being the Holding Road Bridge, which Erik from MOTI is going to be addressing later on, and then the Adams West FSR as well. And that FSR is technically travelable right now, but it's in quite rough shape, not only from the fire, but also geotechnical concerns after some of the rain that came through. So a big factor in terms of the alert and order situation going forward, both on the east and west side of Adams Lake, because the ferry terminal is also north of the Holding Road Bridge, is going to be more so around access as opposed to necessarily the fire activity in the area. I think that's it from the EOC. I will turn it over to Mike at this point so he can give us an update from BC Wildfire. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevin. And I do apologize that I will have to leave. I'm grateful for the opportunity to kind of go first here, so thank you. I am Mike McCulley. I'm the Fire Information Officer with the BC Wildfire Service, currently assigned to the Adams Lake Complex, and I am first day in on the incident, so I will apologize in advance if my briefing is not as detailed as some of you may need, but I will commit to finding out anything that I can for you. If you don't hear what you need from me today, please reach out. Happy to connect with you and work through Kevin and others to find out what it is you're needing and what we can do for you. So again, first day in for me, I'll give you a fairly broad overview and then I'll leave some time for questions. I also did want to recognize that I've traveled here from the traditional territory of the Cog-Youth people in North Vancouver Island. I'm very lucky to live there with my small family, and I'm also grateful to be visiting this territory as well. So I will share my screen, and maybe Kevin, if you could please let me know when things are looking good.
Still your face for the time being. There we go. Okay, it started.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start actually with the Rossmore Lake Wildfire K22024. So this fire, generally we haven't seen a lot of growth on this fire in the last sort of 72-hour period, which is great news. This is obviously due to the downturn in weather that we've had, and I'll speak to the weather at the back end a little bit after I give a brief update. Still having good success on this fire, able to build guard where we need to. We have a lot of focus going on in the sort of southeast and southwest corners, our unit crews are working there to continue to get in as tight as we can to this fire and build guard. With the option of using planned ignitions to remove fuel between the guard and the fire sometime in the next few days if the conditions allow. We're making good progress with the guard. We have roughly 40 pieces of heavy equipment out there. I'm pretty grateful to have that support from our local contracting community. We actually had some opportunity today, just due to the progress we've made, to give a few of them some well-deserved rest. So that's good news for us. That's always a sign that we're sort of trending in the right direction, at least for now. I think the fire sizes generally remain the same. I will note that we are losing roughly 100 Costa Rican wildfire fighters off of this fire today. Very grateful to have them here in country supporting this fire. We will be replacing them with 100 Mexican firefighters that are inbound as well. Those Mexicans will be assigned to the complex. It is likely they will end up sort of working on the northwest flanks of this fire, but that is yet to be determined as we're integrated into the complex. So I will probably just leave it at that on this fire for now, unless there's any questions specific to K22024. And
I think we're okay to move on, Mike. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I will now move over to Bush Creek East Wildfire. So again, for us, the story today again is we do have our unit crews back in working on this fire. Very similar spots to where they were working in the last week or so. We have crews, and I'll go through this quite quickly. We have unit crews working over west of Adams Lake. We have them working up above Scotch Creek. We have a unit crew trying to tie some guard in from the rail line up into an old cut block in a burn area, sort of, east of Sorrento. And then we have a 5th unit crew working down in the southwest flank as well. So those are some of the priority areas that we're working on. We're glad to have them back in. What they're doing is they're continuing to prep line, get in tight to the fire where they can, and really try to get some containment on the fire in those priority areas. Our main goal here is to work hard to get people home into some of these areas and to try to reopen some access. So if you look at this fire closely, you can see the many tentacles that reach out around the perimeter. And that's pretty typical of a wind-driven fire that is doing some really good fuel finding. It's going where it wants to go when the conditions let it to go there. So extremely challenging to have this long, jagged perimeter on a fire. It offers us lots of things that we need to work on. There's steep terrain. There's different fuel types in there. So these are some of the challenges that we're facing, but we are back in being as aggressive as we can before the weather takes a turn to more fire-prone conditions. So I think in general, we have our crews back out. We're excited about that. We're making good progress. No significant growth on this fire in probably the last 72 hours. And then I will just speak briefly to the weather. We know, and I know all of you pay attention to the weather, you watch it closely, but certainly we're seeing temperatures start to climb again. We'll see temperatures approaching 30 degrees, humidity's dropping below that point over the next 2, 3, and even 4 days. So for us, what we expect to see is a little increase in the fire behavior. I know that this fire is very visible up above, the bottom sort of northeast flank. You can see this fire all the way along here from the highway if you are able to pass through. But what I saw when I was out there yesterday is columns of smoke coming up that were pretty straight up and down. That's usually good news. It means we're not having wind-driven excursions, and we don't see that in the forecast in the next 3 days. We're looking at fairly calm conditions. So to sum up, the fire behavior will increase over the next 2, 3, 4 days due to hot, dry conditions. The drought codes will climb, the indices will climb. But the good news is we don't have massive wind in the forecast. Obviously, that provides us some challenge with flying our aircraft. We were able to fly our whole fleet yesterday, which is really good. We had all of our 17 air helicopters fully engaged on this fire, and super helpful for our crews out there and holding lines. So maybe I will just leave it at that. Again, I apologize for the high level overview. For future calls, I'll try to have a little more detail on specifics and specific communities and locations of our crews, but I will turn it over for any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your updates, Mike McCulley, Public Information Officer for the BC Wildfire Service. Recognizing Mike has 15 minutes until he has to leave, we'll open the floor now for questions specific to the Wildfire Service. We will be able to answer questions as the TNRD or our other agencies online here, BC Hydro, Ministry of Transportation. So for the purpose of Mike's time, feel free now to use the raise hand function at the bottom part of your screen. We'll call on that on the order it comes in. Or feel free to write in questions in the chat, which we can address at any time as those questions come in. So I see I'll go over to our participant side here. It looks like we got a first hand up. If I look up here. So the first question is from Mike Malbouf. Mike, I'm going to open your line, and you're welcome to go ahead when you're ready here. And I've just...
Can you get me?
Sorry, Mike, I've just unmuted your line as well.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm 8655 Holding Road. I'm just wondering why the south end of this Bush Creek East fire wasn't taken care of when it hit the mill approximately a week before the winds picked up and all of this craziness happened.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mike. So, I'm going to speak a lot about the future. You're going to hear that from me over the next couple of days. I'll address anything I can about the past, Mike, and I'm happy to take your question. But for us, we continue to be really focused on putting this fire out, moving forward with, any recommendations we can to these local governments to help get people home. As far as what happened on that flank of the fire, we did have crews in those areas. We were working hard. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not there. When we're doing firefighting, and I'm sure you know this, Mike, we're often standing quite far back from the flank of the fire, building our containment lines in a safe way, and then removing fuel between the fire and the flank to try to minimize the risk. Just because you don't see us there doesn't mean we're not. We have been working on this fire for approximately 5 weeks now, but sometimes when we get into these types of conditions, there's really no tactics or techniques that we can do to hold them. We saw extreme wind, 20-kilometer runs, and frankly, it was just too challenging to move crews in there during those conditions.
There's a question in the chat. Mike, I'll just check if you had anything else. I did mute your mic for a moment as it sounded like there was some background noise. Just checking if you had any follow-up to that. We can always go back to you if you'd like as well. I just see your hand still up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I had to lower it.
Oh, you're okay.
For the future of it, like when is a timeline for being able to go home? Like I've already gotten pictures, but I'd like to be able to, go in and try and help my community if there's any spot fires behind my place and behind my friends' places, family.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I see there's a similar question in the chat, maybe with a bit less detail from Larry Pittendry, which is what is required for us to go back into an alert? Mike, did you want to speak about the wildfire service portion? Obviously, the alerts or orders are up to the TNRD, but often come at the recommendation, if not the majority of the time, from the BC Wildfire Service. I know Mike has asked there about wanting to go back in for the purposes he stated as well for protecting property. Did you want to address all of that at once here?
Yeah, I think I'll tag on a little bit to what Kevin opened with and just explain kind of how that process works and what we are doing to try to get you back into these areas as quickly as we can. So as Kevin described, there's lots of risk involved with a wildfire, not just the fire itself. There's other dangers and hazards that exist after a fire moves through. For example, down power lines, damaged bridges and roads, culverts, burnt over toxic materials, just to name a few. So for our agency, what we're doing, and we're doing this like hour by hour, is we're looking at the imminent risk of fire to certain sections of the evacuation order and areas. If we see an opportunity where the risk is low enough that we feel we've got enough work done, or the weather is conducive, or the current conditions allow us to feel the risk is safe, we will reach out and make a recommendation to the local government to possibly change an order to an alert or maybe remove an alert area. Having said that, it is still an extreme challenge for the local government because there's many other hazards that exist after a fire. So, you know, I hope I'm answering the question effectively. For us, we want you to go back. Believe me, our crews take this very personally. If you've ever been out with a crew that's lost a line or had a tough day on the fire, or even had to watch, you know, somebody's personal property lost, it's not something that we take lightly. It's devastating to us, not nearly as much as you, though, I'm sure. But we're looking at these things hour by hour, making those recommendations. We're in constant contact with the local governments to try to get you home as quickly as we can. We want it just as bad as you do.
Thanks for that answer, Mike. I see Mike Malboof also asked about firefighting experience and wanting to go back in that way. Is there anything you had to add on that point right now, Mike? Is that something we could take offline through the TNRD OC if we had Mike in the questions contact us?
Yeah, happy to have a little more specific chat offline about that. I tell you that we are working really hard to try to work with all of our partners on all fires. It's not easy. You know, we do as much pre-org as we can in the winter. We try to prep for these situations, and then we do try to adjust and adapt as the seasons go through and the fires come through. But, you know, working with Interfor is a great example. They've been a stellar partner for us on this fire. You know, many of the nations that we work with and lots of contractors in the local fire department. So it is challenging. I know this is not the answer you're looking for, and I'm happy to have some broader discussion offline with you, but certainly we're always exploring all options.
Great answer, and thank you, Mike. And I see Mike has responded to that as well in the chat. That's great. We still have you for a few more minutes, Mike. There's another question that's come in from the chat from resident named Jeremy at 8489 Holding Road. I don't know personally the ins and outs, but Jeremy says there was not structure protection on his property at 8489 Holding Road near the southwest end of Adams Lake. Jeremy and his neighbor both lost their places. Certainly our heart goes out to yourself, Jeremy, and your neighbor and others in your area who have lost structures as a result of this fire within the TNRD boundaries as we address that here. Jeremy goes on to say again, more about the structure protection and an apparent lack thereof. Mike, did you have anything to add on that? We're talking about, the question was from 8489 Holding Road. I'll leave it up to you how to address that.
Yeah, I mean, apologies. I don't know the specifics of every home on every road. I know that we try our best. We do triage and assessment. I can't speak to whether there was or wasn't structure protection on there. I assume the landowner knows this, and that's why they're saying it. But, you know, we look through what we can. It's a tricky process. We're always trying to triage and look for our best wins and our top successes. And, you know, it's hard when that doesn't pan out well for anyone, especially for the homeowner. But I certainly can't speak to the specifics of that home at this time. Again, happy to have some follow-up, but you know, when we're going through with structure protection, again, and I have to reiterate, before an event like this, with the wind blowing as hard as it did, there's sometimes nothing that's effective. And I'm not trying to make excuses or say we didn't do what we should have. Certainly when we're triaging, we're looking at where we can win and where we can't. And sometimes those are really hard decisions.
Mm-hmm. And certainly if we can continue a discussion if needed, Jeremy, for specific areas, specific properties, we encourage the residents of the TNRD to contact the TNRD Emergency Operations Center too, and we can look into situations as well. There's a couple other questions in the chat, and thanks for your answer, Mike. And again, apologies for Jeremy again for the situation. We know that there's obviously a handful of residents in your area who have lost property. I'm just going to unmute the microphone here of Amber D'Amico. Amber, your hand is up there. I've opened your line. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm just curious if removing the order to alert, are we looking at like a staged approach to this based on whatever criteria we have to meet for each area?
So Colton, I can probably hop in there. So as Mike said, the Wildfire Service is going to look at it strictly from the perspective of fire behavior and what they've gotten done in terms of you know, danger trees, things like that. from the local government perspective, yeah, like we can get as granular as we need to in terms of getting those orders to alert. So yeah, by no means, it's not going to be a matter of, you know, if there's properties further north or further south, depending on what the situation is, we will try to get those to alert as soon as we can. It doesn't have to be a whole community at once sort of thing. And what we'll typically do in a situation like that is we'll move our security further in so that the folks who are permitted to get back in aren't going to be obstructed, but then we can still secure the areas that are impacted. So, I realize because we've only got Mike for a few minutes, we wanted some of these questions at the gate, but in terms of the kind of return plan, we'll have a bit more texture to that once we've heard from BC Hydro and MOTI, and we can kind of get into the nitty-gritty of that a little bit more. And then while I've got the floor, just for Mike Malbooth, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. By all means, feel free to reach out to the EOC. I was the person who was on your property on Monday doing the damage assessment. And, you know, if there's opportunities, and again, we'll get into this a little bit further, but if there's opportunities, if you need to get in for a short period or something like that before the order is lifted, we can look at options, but it will depend on the Adams West FSR and the Holding Road Bridge as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Amber. If anyone has a follow-up question or an additional question, feel free to put your hand up at any time. There was another question in the chat about who would be able to answer these questions. So certainly we are looking to, you know, address questions too one-on-one if needed from residents. So I would direct that to reach out to our TNRD Emergency Operations Center, as many have been doing in the last week or so as a result of this fire and many other TNRD residents in affected areas. And we'll do our best to get you the exact information you're looking for. So I would answer that question with, you know, refer to our TNRD EOC information, which is public, and I'll be saying that at different points during this meeting, or for Kevin's information in the chat. And thank you for that, Kevin. There was also a question about Locan Bear Creek Road opening for residences to come back home through Chase. I think that one would be separate from the wildfire service, so I'll go back to that question shortly. I'm just checking if we have any other questions. It looks like we have a question online from Tracy Lawrenson, and I don't know if we've already addressed this. Is there a staged approach to move from order to alert? Agencies trying to get to alert as soon as possible, and that may mean pockets change sooner than others. I think safely, Kevin, we addressed that. We can have that conversation continued again, and I'm sure we'll reiterate that at different points in the next little bit here during this meeting. I don't see any hands up in the chat. I see a couple questions coming in, and it looks like none of these are related at this moment for the BC Wildfire Service. So Mike McCulley, just wanted to say thank you for your time, BC Wildfire Service Information Officer. Thank you for taking part and providing the information you have for residents in this area.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe just a parting comment. Listen, I just want to thank everybody for being patient. Even today, I'm having to leave early. I don't love it. I'd love to stay on and listen and chat with all of you. Hopefully I can, you know, be available through Kevin and the group here again if need be, and just really appreciate the patience. I'm not going to pretend to understand how easy this is for you, but, you know that we care and we're trying, and thank you.
Well said. Thank you very much, Mike. So we're seeing we have questions that are continuing to come in, so I'm taking stock of what has been answered, what hasn't. Please continue to ask your questions, and we'll take those. But what we'll do is we'll go through the rest of our presenters, and then we'll take questions. So we'll go to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. We have Erik Lathmuth, who's here to provide an update on MOTI work in this wildfire area. Erik, you're welcome to go ahead when you're ready.
Great, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So I guess I'll jump right into it. A big one for us today was Highway 1 reopening at 10 a.m. So just an information piece for travelers out there. We do have the information on Drive BC, but it is still active work happening in the area. There's utilities going on, so you can expect that there could be some delays throughout that corridor, but it is open, it's safe. Maybe I'll give a quick rundown of what we did with Highway 1, which might give you a sense of what we're doing for our other roads throughout the region. So we did, our own assessment and working with BC Wildfire Service to find out when it's safe from a fire perspective to be able to open the road to the public. We also did an assessment for geotech to determine if there are any rockfall hazards or other geotechnical hazards that are on the road. So that was completed prior to opening Highway 1. We also did a danger tree assessment. As you can imagine, with the fire going right through a pretty good swath of Highway 1, we had to ensure that there were no danger trees that were at risk to fall. And a lot of that has to be done in conjunction with utilities that have poles that were down as well. So that was completed for Highway 1 prior to opening. And then, just the general road condition itself. Typically, we don't see a lot of road surface damage, but we need to check culverts and things of that nature. So that was all done prior to opening Highway 1 and gives you a sense of what's going to be involved as we look for the other roads that are impacted by the fire. I'll talk about a couple other highlights that we're working on as well right now. Holding Bridge, I know, is a big one for us. We have bridge crews in there working on shoring up the bridge itself. We're getting kind of in the field information as they start their work. We could be looking at a 1 to 2 week time frame before we can open that bridge up. But we are looking for any alternatives and looking for creative engineering solutions that we might be able to get some temporary access in earlier. In the meantime, we understand that, it's tricky to get in for danger tree assessment work on the other side of the bridge. So we've sent crews in today to start having a look at the north side of the bridge through Agate Bay, which we understand is open, but could be a little tricky. So we've been able to access in there, just getting a sense of what the danger trees are and making sure that we're working on those while we work to open the bridge as well, so we don't have that holding up the process. Hopefully that gives a good sense. Maybe just also a quick update. Of course, the ferry itself is closed to the public with the order being on in the area, and Adams Lake Ferry is for emergency responders there only at this time. And I'm here and happy to answer any questions that you might have for transportation.
Okay, thank you for that info, Erik. Very helpful with roads within and highways within the TNRD areas of the Bush Creek East Fire that are impacted. Highway 1, Adams Forest Road, and Holding Bridge, as well as the Adams Lake Ferry. You mentioned the status of that as well. There are obviously transportation questions. We'll hold those for a little bit here. I just wanted to go to BC Hydro, and I'm not sure if it's Dag Sharman or Greg Jackson or both, but the floor is yours.
Thank you, Colton. It's both of us. I'm Dag Sharman. I manage community relations for BC Hydro for the Southern Interior. And with me today is Greg Jackson, whose crews he's our operations manager for the region, and his crews have been working hard on this fire and others, but this fire since the beginning. And first off, we just want to express to folks who've been impacted by this fire that our hearts are with you. This is such a terrible thing to have to go through, and it's a long-term recovery. We have been just getting in to assess the damage. We need to get access to these areas, which obviously with bridges down, that sort of thing is difficult, but even the fire situation itself delays our access for safety reasons. The way we approach the fire is our initial approach is to assist the wildfire and local fire crews, making sure folks are safe, and so safety and assisting the fight against the fire is the first part, and then we look at when we can get in, we look at the damage and come up with a plan and begin the recovery and the restoration process. But this is a major damage to our system in this area. We haven't been able to assess the entire area yet, but areas we have been able to access and assess. Most of our infrastructure in this area is a total loss. And so we sympathize with folks, but the reality is that this is going to be a long rebuild. We're talking weeks. There may be some pockets that we are able to repower earlier than that, more quickly, as we go in and we assess things and see that we all know how fires behave and they can skip areas and that sort of thing. And sometimes we find some good news in there, but we do want folks to be ready for this to be quite a long power outage for folks in this area. Our damage assessment to date related to the Bush Creek area, the Bush Creek fire area, is that we have about 22 kilometers of power line that has been burned, including the poles. That's over 300 poles and associated equipment, transformers and other pieces of equipment. And so we have multiple crews on site. As we assess and begin our restoration work, we'll bring more people in. We've got I believe the number today is 45. By Monday, we'll have 120 because we are able to start to do some repairs. And so we are able to use those crews. So we'll have about 120 workers on site by Monday. And going forward, we will be prioritizing, as we always do, with critical infrastructure, restoring power to critical infrastructure first, where we can, and then the larger groups of customers where we can. But this is a major rebuild, and I'll ask Greg if you could add some bit more detail and information for folks who are living in the area.
Yeah, again, Greg Jackson here, and I'm Senior Field Operations Manager. That's a broad region here, as Dave explained. Put it quite succinctly, our initial response is to make safe, help highways and firefighting, clear debris from the roads and do what we can to make areas safe. As Erik has mentioned, we follow a similar principle with planning and whatnot, where we're danger tree assessing and making sure we've got areas cleared where it's safe to do work. That's really the mode we're in right now, is providing assistance to others. At that same time, we're developing our damage assessment. With the holding bridge being out of commission and access through the north being difficult, we have not been able to properly damage assess north of the holding bridge up to Adams Lake. We do have thorough damage assessment though from the holding bridge back south, and to Dag's comments, the return of that is that our infrastructure is 90% destroyed. That may look to folks that are in the area to look not as impactful as my statement makes, but they're burnt off at ground and they're structurally unsound. So basically meaning we're having to do replacements for that. As Dag has mentioned, we've had about 40 to 50 folks on the ground in various locations. This fire is broad, and I know this call is for a bit of a specific area, but we have a wide range of area that we're working in. Our focus has to date been in Highway 1, where Erik has mentioned we're trying to take advantage of some of the tree removals and things like that, and the ability to have the highway closed for us to do work. Obviously, the highway needs to get open, so we will be continuing to work in that area. But electrical service to this area feeds from Sorrento down the highway across the Skrepnek Bridge and up into the area. So one can visualize that with this extensive damage, we're basically non-existent for a power line from 3 kilometers to the east of the Skrepnek Bridge, in across the bridge, and then up through Skrepnek Engelmont Road, and then completely up Holding Road to the bridge. We've got some intel from Interfor from the north side of the bridge that indicates that what we see on the south side of the bridge is on the north side. So total of 6 kilometers between those 2 points. So extensive damage. Into the Little Shuswap, similar fire damage. So not many locations that in this area that were unaffected. The south of Highway 1, so into Turtle Valley, here's where some of the good news starts. We were able to get in and do some proactive grubbing ahead of this fire that was moving. So we have done some things that if fire was to extend further south, we've got some precautionary measures in there that could aid if the fire was to move. But at this time, the fire is holding short of our infrastructure. We do not have any customers that are affected in that area. So mobilizing of additional crews is posed for Monday. There's going to be substantial activity. We've established through work with First Nations some land where we can put a laydown yard for materials. We will be marshaling crews out of there to have, expedite our construction, eliminate excessive travel time. We will be using multiple means of reconstruction made up of internal BC Hydro crews, external contracting crews, a mix. It is a all hands on deck situation. And as you can imagine, there are, numerous fires in the province, and we're pulling from every available resource we can to begin our work here. And when it comes to providing estimates of restoration, as has been noted earlier, we work with local groups to determine we have the right quote critical infrastructure identified: water treatment, water plants, medical facilities, things of that nature. We want to ensure that our restoration efforts head to the right directions. The irony of this is we have to build a backbone of a system to even be able to accommodate that. So restoration times are going to be what most will consider lengthy. We are in a weeks process here, but as we build out, there will be opportunities for connections to come online, but substantial amounts of time that it's going to require to get to these locations. And I guess probably one of the things that stands out most for those that are on Holding Road or to the north of Holding Road, the best way to articulate that would be we pretty much have to rebuild our entire line to get to that location. So being able to move residents back in, I guess, from that discussion of removing orders and going to alerts, if you do that in shorter fashion, there would be residents that would be in an area with no electricity potentially. So just want to make sure that that's sort of making people aware. And that's the description that I have for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dag, Sharman, and Greg Jackson for the detailed update. That's good clarity on, as much as it's not good news, about weeks, it looks like, north of the Holding Bridge before power would be restored to residents in that area. That was good news that you had about Turtle Valley, about no hydro infrastructure impacts there, and some precautionary grubbing and other measures in place that you said, as just in case. We're just going to go now to our TNRD recovery manager, Dale Kronebusch. This portion might more impact residents who unfortunately have lost structures or had structural impacts on their property as a result of the fire. But we are going to go to the more general overarching Q&A once we hear from Dale. But Dale, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. You can hear me just fine?
Sounds good, yes.
Good, okay. So I'm Dale Kronebusch. I'm the recovery manager hired on for the TNRD for this season. I've been in touch with the residences on Holding Road that have had some major or some partial damages to their properties, and we've been speaking, and we'll start continuing to speak. The next step for you folks is I'll be getting a hold of you, and we'll be doing some needs assessments to see what you actually need to help you along. And then we start looking at different avenues that you could try and go for to try and get going with it. One of the things to remember that when we talk about recovery is that some people have got different levels, obviously, of damage to property, and so therefore their level will be different in what, and everybody's going to have an individual approach. So that's what I try to do, is try to tailor it to an individual approach and try to help you along. So when you run into some problems with red tape somewhere, whether it's in building permits or whether it's there, I try and help stick handle some of that stuff for you to make it an easier or passable. If you don't quite understand the government process, I'm there to help you as well. So basically, I'm a resource for you, and specifically for you if you've lost it. If you've got other folks that are just sitting there and they're not with any power, there's no damage to the property, there's some things we have to do with you as well, and that might be your fridges and freezers. We are going to start coming out shortly with some plans to try and take away your fridges and freezers. So if I get you to do anything, if you've got a fridge and a freezer that was full of product and you've walked out the door and you've left it with hydro being off, take in some duct tape with you, tape them shut, don't open them inside your house, tape them shut, and then try to look at getting ready to haul them outside. So when we give you the word, because you don't want to have them going outside and sitting outside with wildlife out there. it won't take long for a bear to come by, and they'll smell it a mile away to come by and then start making havoc. Now you've got bears in the areas, and they are hungry out there right now this time of year as well. So stay tuned. There's more information coming so that we can help you along, and that's what we want to do next, is just to try and make it as easy a transition to your recovery as we can. And if you've got those questions that are just not sure, how do we, we'll try and deal with it that way.
Okay, thank you for that update, Dale. I know you've been in contact with a good number of property owners and residents in the Adams Lake area already and made that connection. And we'll keep you around for any questions that come into. I think I've seen at least one scanning through the chat that might be best for you to answer. But we're going to go to the general Q&A now. I'm going to be reading off of the chat for a while now, as I'm just going to go in the order that questions have come in for this point. So continue to put questions in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to ask out loud. So again, we're opening up that for more questions to come in with our partner agencies who are here, and with us, the TNRD, able to answer what we can, continue to do that. So I'm going to go to a first question. And I don't have the name in there, but I alluded to it about 20 minutes ago about, do we have any idea when Logan Bear Creek Road will open for residences to come back home through Chase? Perhaps that's a question. I believe, Kevin, I don't know if this would be for the TNRD or for Erik at MOTI. I don't believe there are any impacts to that road, but it has to do with the evacuation order.
Yeah, so that section of road is currently under order. The access through Chase goes through Adams Lake, IR number 4. Now, we have heard that the band is looking at rescinding their order for IR 4, which is the community directly across the river from Chase. I don't have any confirmation on that. I think those discussions are happening this afternoon. We would probably take a pretty strong look at Logan Bear Creek at that point in terms of the order. It's my understanding Wildfire is certainly still working quite actively in that area. So having said that, though, given the challenges on the other side up on Holding Road, I would expect that the Logan Bear Creek section will be going to alert sooner than the other area. I wouldn't bet on it happening this weekend, just given the weather forecast and things are going to be heating up again. But I'd be optimistic that we'd be looking at, early next week. So if Adams Lake does rescind their order, we would move our security likely to the Skrepnek rec site just to make sure that area is still secure. And it is also, there is an order in place, but if folks are interested in requesting a temporary access pass, we can look at that on a case-by-case basis, depending on what folks need to go in for.
Okay, that's a really detailed answer and great information. Thank you for that, Kevin. That's very good to know for Logan Bear Creek Road and the status there and access. So another question came from Gary. Will the TNRD be putting out communication on funding services available to affected residents, such as for disaster financial assistance, in addition to their insurance? I could probably answer that, Kevin. Certainly we'll be looking at where this essentially, when we do get this information, absolutely we will make sure that residents are aware that this is available. I know in the past we have put out information publicly through our TNRD channels, whether it's online and through our social media, and sometimes through other means to let people know that different opportunities are available or have opened up. So we're going to be taking a closer look at that regardless, and we'll be letting residents know of any new opportunities too. And of course, Dale's definitely the best point person for directed residents to contact the TNRD if they are looking for supports for recovery. Did you have anything to add for that question, Dale?
Yeah, I do. I think it's important that everybody understand that wildfires and fires is an insurable event, and the disaster financial assistance does not typically get opened up for private residences on fires. It's definitely, they open it up as a rule if it's a big enough event for floods and other events, but fires is totally 100% insurable. And so a lot of the position in the past has been that they're not eligible, so they don't even offer it. And it's really heartening when you start looking at mixing up your fires and your floods, because on one side, one area could be right across the street and it's dealing with floods, and they become eligible for DFA, and the ones on the other side of the street have actually had some fires and they're not eligible. So it really becomes a real cloudy situation. But that we need to just take it case by case. If you've got those questions, I'll certainly field the answers, and we'll try to do it. We're going to look at some of the NGOs and some of the other places that we can look at for some funding and for some assistance in getting your homes back built together. But remember, in this season, it's a huge season for British Columbia. So we have a very small amount in the Thompson-Nicola regional district compared to what the CSRD has or what the Cord has and so on. So a lot of the other regional districts have got much higher numbers in losses and so on. So and like I say, everybody's different, but we'll take and do it one at a time.
And you mentioned NGOs. That would be
non-government organizations. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't want to be wrong and offer that, but so thank you for that
sorry.
clarity.
Yeah, we're acronyms all through here, so I really shouldn't say that. But yeah, it's non-government organizations.
Not to worry, but thank you, Dale. Next question in the chat was from somebody in Turtle Valley, Penny. Is there any reason why Turtle Valley did not get an alert until the fire was already on top of us? Is there anything we can say to this, Kevin? Personally, I don't know, but
yeah, things were moving exceptionally fast on Friday. So there was an evacuation alert in for a very short period for Turtle Valley before that was switched over to an order. And literally that when it did go to an order, the incident commander from Wildfire was talking to me directly on his phone while they were evacuating their own camp at the Squilax airstrip. So I think that illustrates just how quickly things were moving. Yeah, obviously, in an ideal world, we always have an alert in for a comfortable amount of time before it goes to an order. But in that situation, unfortunately, it was a pretty compressed time frame. What we did do, because things were moving so quickly, is we did utilize the province's alert ready system. So folks might be familiar with things like Voyant Alert or Alertable, which are the subscription-based things that are offered through your local government where you can get alerts on your phone. We utilize the provincial system, which is the one where you get the alert whether you want it or not. It's the same system that the Amber Alerts use. So we use that in the Turtle Valley because things happen so quickly there. We wanted to ensure that as many people as possible got it. Now, I'm cognizant that cell coverage isn't great in the Turtle Valley, so we did also resources were quite tapped that night in terms of RCMP and search and rescue. So TNRD staff, myself, as well as members of the Pritchard Fire Department actually deployed out there Friday night to hand deliver that evacuation order as well, just to make sure that everybody was aware. But yeah, I fully acknowledge that happened quite quickly, obviously with the fire spotting over Little River there and into the Turtle Valley. So not ideal, but we got it out as quickly as we could.
Yeah, good answer, Kevin. Absolutely. Yeah, certainly a bit of an extraordinary fire situation. I know we did put out some additional messaging online too to recognize that. Unfortunately, it can be the nature of going from alert to order. I want to move down to Tammy from Adams Lake, Southwest Adams Lake. What requirements will be put on homeowners to return to the property once the TNRD gives the all clear? But I think that means downgrades from order to alert. Suspect it would be a little too early to say on the situation. Certainly if when we do have additional messaging to put out, we make that clear in our notices that go out when the time does come to go from order to alert, such as if there were impacts to BC hydropower, as it sounds like, that will be a factor, for example. Kevin, did you have any other information? Any other comment?
Yeah, so we typically will not, if we're in a situation where there's no longer a safety concern and there is access and egress, the power not being restored yet is not necessarily a barrier to us lifting the evacuation order. And that is typically the province's approach as well. because we kind of, to a degree, still have to take direction from emergency management BC in terms of kind of what's accepted and what's not. So yeah, short answer is no. We could see that evacuation order lifted before the power is restored. Now, having said that, if there are people who are not comfortable going back until power is restored, we would need to look at that with the province, because typically that's looked at on a case-by-case basis. It's referred to as an extraordinary evacuee. So it could be people who have dialysis machines or things like that, where it's impractical for them to be home if they don't have power. So we would need to look at that and kind of cross that bridge when we get there. But short answer, no. Restoring power wouldn't be a barrier to that order getting lifted.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. A question for BC Hydro, Jag and or Greg from Jeremy at 8489 Holding Road is, are we able to get temporary hydro service on our property if we've lost our home?
I can speak to that. As we do our mainline restorations and we front the property, there's an ability to work with our design group, and yes, we can work with the landowners on some type of arranging for temporary power, which would most likely become permanent once reconstruction took place. So yes, the short answer is yes, we can work with customers on that.
And just to be clear, that would be after we build out the main infrastructure that has been damaged, so that we can get the power to the homes.
Yeah, we have to be reestablished in front in the public road or what have you, in order to provide a service from BC Hydro for a temporary connection.
Okay. Of course, you'd have to have something to connect to, so that makes sense. Thank you, Dag and Greg. Gary has a question. This would be for the TNRD EOC, I suspect, in terms of what steps are being taken to prevent looting in evacuated areas. Certainly, I know we have security. Kevin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah. So we do have security and traffic control checkpoints in place now. The unfortunate reality with rural areas, and it's certainly not specific to this neck of the woods, is that locals especially are going to know every way in and out, and there's usually lots of them, right? So we do what we can. We combine that with roving patrols with security or RCMP as well. But yeah, no, that does fall to the local government or the First Nations responsibility, and we do have those checkpoints in place. And like I said, we do have a permit system for folks who may or may not have a reason to get in. But yeah, that is definitely always a concern, and it's always trying to strike a balance between keeping folks out who shouldn't be there and not trying to be too disruptive for folks who have decided to stay behind on their property as well. So it's a balance we have to strike. Certainly, if folks have any input or suggestions around where security could be set up, or perhaps set up in a better way, yeah, by all means, reach out to the EOC and we'll look at what we can do.
Thank you, Kevin. A question in from Penny in Turtle Valley again. Is there going to be assessment repairs to Turtle Valley Squilax Road up to Turtle Valley? It was down to the base, I believe, being reference to the fire, reaching a dangerous point. I'm questioning it even worse now. I know fortunately Hydro has given the update that there was no infrastructure damaged in Turtle Valley for hydro equipment, and certainly we have not seen structure loss Turtle Valley Squilax Road or any other part of Turtle Valley, fortunately. I don't know if there are any impacts to Turtle Valley Squilax Road. Eric, I don't know if you had any comment on this.
Yeah, we had a danger tree in there yesterday doing an initial assessment. There's still, pretty active area as far as things are going. So their initial assessment was that it's not nearly as bad from a danger tree perspective as the other side of the highway there in the Squilax-Sangamon area. So expecting a shorter kind of cleanup amount of work that would be necessary in there from a danger tree perspective. So yeah, we're planning to have all of our assessments done through there as necessary. So we'll drive through with our staff, determine if we need a geotech assessment, if there's any areas of concern, carry that out, get it done. And we always try to ensure that that we're ahead of other agencies wherever possible, so that it's not waiting on any of our assessments or work to get it open. But yeah, it looks like that area for the most part, much less danger tree concerns. So less work for us to do in that section.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Eric. We're getting plenty of questions on chat, no hands up, so I'm going to keep reading them out. We know that the question from Wayne is, does BC Hydro know when they can start to provide actual target dates for power back on for specific areas? And I think we're focusing on Adams Lake here. I know you mentioned weeks is what we're looking at. Do we know when we'd look at specific dates? Is it too soon to say?
Anything further on that, Greg?
Yeah, just to put again into perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we're fed from Sorrento, and we're what we call a radial line, meaning we don't have necessarily a connection to another line to feed from another direction. So we're having to rebuild from basically point A to point B, and point B in this instance is the mill and Adams Lake, basically the end of our circuit. So all of that damage that I've mentioned in that area, like complete rest, we basically are doing a complete rebuild of our line from 3 kilometers to the east of the Squilocks Bridge on Highway 1, up across the road, up Squilock Angmont, onto Holding, across all the way up to the mill. So very substantial. So the comments of weeks, I think is that as we get rolling next week with reconstruction, we will be like, as we are able to finite the construction timelines, we will make public more specific dates. But again, we have not assessed north of the bridge, and I may answer a question that's in the chat here now because it's part of this context. As we access safely back through Agate Bay, in combination with a helicopter patrol that we're looking to do, that will aid in our restoration planning and may allow us to come at 2 directions in this location to be more efficient and speed the timeline up. But again, those are fluid things that we're working through right now. So providing days and times, unable to do that at this point.
Okay, we'll be sure to follow up on that at a later date. A question that's come into, there's kind of a 3-part question, but one of the parts is Hydro able to access the area between the Interfor Mill and Holding Road Bridge at all at this point from Adams Forest Road?
To my comments, we're exploring that option, and in absence of that, we will do a helicopter patrol. So a flyover that will provide us potentially equal damage assessment information. Excellent.
Thank you, Greg, and apologies if you answered this one as well, but I know this was tagged to you as well, so you've probably seen it. And is BC Hydro considering waiving charges and interest for customers impacted by this outage? Maybe is it too soon to say on a topic like that?
No, it's not. I can tell you that if a customer is under an evacuation order for 5 days or more, then they receive a credit on their bill for the duration of the time that the evacuation order is in place. And that's automatic. So we have a process where we follow the evacuation orders, and so we know who's on order and that sort of thing. So yes, 5 days or more, which obviously is the case in this situation, then you will receive a credit on your bill for the duration of the evacuation order. And also I should note that if property is unfortunately destroyed, then as a result of the fire, then in those cases we waive the charges since the previous billing period, which may be before the fire, but the whole previous billing period, all of those charges will be waived, and you won't receive a final bill in those situations.
Thank you for that, Dag.
If I've explained that.
No, absolutely. The third part of the question was, will BC Hydro and TNRD assist with removal or replacement of fridges and freezers? Hauling full-size freezers out will be hard for older homeowners, was the question. Dale, would we have any input on that from the TNRD side?
that what we've always done in the past, in the previous fires, is we've asked the property owner to get it to the curb, and then we've had a bigger truck coming through. Now this may change with the demographics of the property sizes and so on. We may end up taking up driveways and stuff, but and again, I'm not sure about the getting it out of the private property's home, the private homeowner's home, because of some liability issues as well. So they need to obviously, maybe it's one of those community get together, and a couple of young strapping guys in the community, they'll give them all a hand and just go from house to house and get her done. That the plan's not built yet on that.
Excellent. There was a question, just for the sake of everyone who's tuned in, from the chat about can MOTI expand on any of the temporary solutions that might be faster for Holding Road Bridge solutions? The answer from Erik at MOTI was that the ministry is looking at temporary bridge installation and various methods to shore up the bridge without full repair. And Erik says that he has a separate bridge team currently working on that situation. There was another question about the Holding Road Bridge. This one would be for you again, Erik. Rachel says the first estimate for the bridge was 4 to 5 days. I believe that references an update that was posted on the Bush Creek East Fire incident webpage on the BC Wildfire Service website. The first estimate being 4 to 5 days, now another 2 weeks. Up to another 2 weeks. Can MOTI explain why the timeline has potentially tripled?
Yeah, unfortunately, our original estimates were just based on what we could see without being able to get the engineers into the area, just based on pictures of what we were looking at, and the damage was quite a bit more extensive. So unfortunately, that just required more work to get the repairs done. So yeah, we try to do our best to give information to folks early on what we're seeing, just to give them a sense, but I appreciate everybody's patience, as some of these timelines will change as we get further into the work and the detailed engineering that's necessary for something like the bridge here.
Okay, thank you, Erik. This one from Sonia would be for the TNRD and likely a recovery manager. Can Sonia's insurance company apply for a temporary permit to prove total loss of home?
Yes, I think that's probably a pretty fair thing to do. We know that with insurance and the programs that they have to try and get validation of the losses and so on, I think that probably wouldn't happen, or there wouldn't be an allowance till after the order was lifted and deemed to be safe to go in. Because remembering, it's not just the safety of the general public property, but it's also the safety of the person's property as well that needs to be carefully looked after as well to try and get in there. So. But definitely, they can get a hold of me, and we can start working one-on-one to try and make sure that their insurance company will gain access or have access to that for sure.
Thank you, Dale. Another Holding Bridge question for Erik in the Adams Lake area from Tracy L. Is the Holding Bridge able to be crossed right now by emergency crews while repairs are ongoing? Essentially, is it passable at all, even for people working on it right now? I don't know if there's any comment you would be able to say on that.
Yeah, sorry, I did put in the chat.
We did see it there.
Yeah, not passable for anybody at this time. So I did have that exact same question with our bridge team, and I know that they're looking at any option to get any kind of temporary access, knowing that we need responders through, if possible, for those efforts beyond. But yeah, at this time, they don't have a solution for temporary access.
There are 2 questions likely for BC Hydro here from Amber D'Amico in the question and answer. They're on Holding Road and have a generator. Are they able to go back home if they can power it themselves with the Jenny? And is the Interfor mill on the same timeline for hydro repairs?
We wouldn't be able to comment about whether or not you'd be allowed back in. Of course, that's not an area of hydro jurisdiction. And as for the mill,
yeah, again, as was noted earlier, it is basically at the end of the line that we have to reconstruct. So timeline will be substantial to get fully restored back to the mill site.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just looking through here as I've gotten caught up on all the questions in our chat here. I'm just looking in case I've missed anything here. There was a question, and I don't know if this might be not a question for any of the agencies online, but a question from Heather about my understanding that because this area is not going to get government funding, Adams Lake area, because not as many homes were impacted in Adams Lake in comparison to other areas in the province. Is this true? Heather's concerned for her neighbors without insurance. I believe that would be a topic that would be determined by the province of BC through the Emergency Management and Climate Readiness Ministry. The local government, for example, wouldn't be able to specify or really determine at all what kind of provincial funding would be available for events. I know in the past for large scale events, disasters, there have been different avenues that the province has opened up for quite a few different events, in fact, in the last 4 to 5 years. Did you have any insight into this process at all, Dale, in terms of how the province makes streams available for heavily impacted areas? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I think what's going to happen is there's probably more information to come on that. As the fires start settling down and people starting to return to their homes and knowing the magnitude of all the properties that are affected within the province, and especially through the Okanagan Valley, I think it's important that we can maybe start piggybacking off of some of the areas that have a much bigger problem, or not, it's not just 2 properties. They may have a few more properties than just 2 properties. And so therefore, there might be something that they'll decide they'll launch for this year, this fire season, and we can piggyback off of that for sure. Just got to keep my ear to the ground on that one.
Absolutely, as will we. There was a question in the chat about the state of Turtle Valley Squilax Road from Penny. Penny, I know that Erik has put his information in the chat there, his email, if you wanted to address that directly through MOTI. There's a hand up from Amber D'Amico. Amber, go ahead and unmute your mic, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for my question again. I understand Hydro doesn't want to address the situation with the mill, but I don't think there was a clear answer on what the procedure is of going back in if you've got generators.
Yeah, that would be and I think, Kevin, we've mentioned this. Yeah, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah. So no, the power being restored wouldn't be a barrier to us lifting the evacuation order. So yeah, if there's folks who want to go back and run off generator or other means, yeah, they'll be free to do so. Once it's safe from all the other perspectives. Yeah.
Once the order's lifted, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was a question from Gary about permits in the chat for properties on evacuation order and recovering possessions. I don't know if you had a comment, Kevin, but I think we could safely say, Gary, feel free to contact our TNRD Emergency Operations Center with that question. We've been doing a lot of case-by-case basis supports for residents as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Colton. So yeah, I will. I think I put our info in there already, but I'll put it into the chat again for the EOC. And yeah, as Colton said, it's going to be case by case depending on where the property is, what the fire activity is that day, access, things like that. So yeah, we'll put that into the chat again, and yeah, by all means, reach out and we'll look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly would take into account where the property is, would have to know the address because it could be different in one area than another, certainly. Now, just one other question that's coming from Larry for BC Hydro. I think we'll just about wrap it up here, unless I see any other hands up after this, but will Hydro cover propane costs for running a generator until power is restored? I'm not sure how that... Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot again, Greg and Dag. I'm not sure how that process works, so I'm just going to throw it to you.
Would Hydro pay for propane to power in place of electricity? No, that is not something we've done in the past. I don't think that's something we would consider.
Yeah, certainly other supports available through billing that you mentioned a few minutes ago for residents in a situation where they would need to do that, even if it's not specifically for that reimbursement. One other hand up, 2 other hands up. We'll take these last 2 questions here. Wayne and Catherine, I've unmuted you. Or I'll need you to unmute, sorry, and then you're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Can you hear me?
Certainly can.
Okay, just a quick comment and then a question. Glad to hear the comments about electricity not being a barrier for removing the orders. And Yeah, most of us here have generators, and just also a comment that our ancestors survived for about 100 years before we had power here too. So we can go back to the old ways if need be. So thanks for that consideration. The questions to do with the Adams Lake Forest Service Road. We are one of the people who are here, and we have a pretty good vantage point from across the lake of the Forest Service Road, and there's actually quite a bit of traffic on it already. The Wildfire Service, some of the locals, I think, people who were unable to get out during the evacuation order, and things got pretty hairy here, so they traveled out, after things settled down a little bit, and so on and so forth. So from our vantage point, the road looks very travelable and very traveled. So I'm just curious, or would like to know what exactly needs to be done to open up Adams Forest Service Road to everybody, and who's taking the lead on it, please?
Yeah, so I can address that. So the road itself, in terms of the decision to open it and to what traffic, would be the Ministry of Forests. So it's still under their purview. And BC Wildfire Service is obviously part of that ministry, so they would be part of it. I think the concern right now, and I traveled the road Monday, and it was in relatively good shape. Obviously, with the exception of a few areas where the fire had burned over. I think the concern between now and then has been they were able to do a quick geotechnical look at the road, basically in terms of the stability of the ground above the road and below the road, and the sort of engineering input they had at the time was that anything over 10 mils of rain was going to potentially cause issues for the road to wash out in areas, things like that. And they ended up getting quite a bit more than that with the rain that came through midway through this week. So I think they are going to be needing to look at that from that perspective in terms of the stability of the road as opposed to the actual fire activity around it. And it is also entirely possible that the ministry might look to just have that open to industrial traffic initially, at least for the mill. But yeah, that would be the local Ministry of Forest District making that decision. So there is security. There's a security checkpoint at Agate Bay, at the intersection of Agate Bay and the Adams West FSR. So they are keeping folks out. But yeah, it would be the province's decision as to what happens with that road.
Yeah, and that's where it gets a little interesting, right? If I understand, you mentioned Ministry of Forest, Kevin, where a provincial road, like a holding road or Highway 1 would be Ministry of Transportation, but a forest road is the Ministry of Forests. So that can vary in who has responsibility within the province.
Yeah,
absolutely. I don't see any other questions pending at this point. I think we're all going to wrap that up here. So I want to thank the Wildfire Service and Mike McCulley again, who's left. I really want to thank Dag Sharman and Greg Jackson, as well as Erik Lathmuth. I see Dag's got a comment to make. I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Colton. We just saw a question in there for us about a specific area that Greg is aware of.
Yeah, I believe the ask was around some restoration timing for Silvery Beach Road, which is located just off of Highway 1 and just to the west of the Squilax Bridge. So our infrastructure rebuild on the highway would be very adjacent to that. So restoration is dependent on that, but it is very close to the start of our restoration efforts. So timing for a reconnection there would be sooner rather than weeks, right? We will be actively working in that area, and that's our area of focus at this time. I'm thinking that can be done within the week potentially.
Yeah, thank you for catching that question. That's where, as Kevin mentioned, the geography gets a little tricky, as that portion is outside of the TNRD, but certainly no reason why we can't help get you the right information like what Dag and Greg have done just now. So thank you for that. And I'll just go to Erik, who has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Colton. Just a quick plug there with the Highway 1 and really for all of our side roads as well. Just really appreciate everybody kind of being respectful of the impacted areas and the no stopping zones. So just as far as pulling over on the side of the highway and the risk that presents. So we have signage in there indicating that it's a no stopping zone. There's work happening in the area. There is still evac orders in certain areas adjacent to Highway 1, and we may run into this situation on other side roads as well as we work towards reopening. So I just wanted to put a plug out there. Please send it out to everybody to be respectful. If you don't need to be in the area, please don't add additional traffic to that area as folks are looking to get work done in there, and please don't stop and pull off in those areas which could perhaps present a safety risk. And of course, don't be accessing in and moving cones or going in beyond to areas that are on evac order and need to stay inaccessible. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Erik. Before we sign off, I'm just going to give some quick notices on how you can receive information on the status of evacuation order and alert updates and where you can find information. I'm sharing my screen. This is our webpage, tnrd.ca/emergency. This is how it looks when you go onto it. We have links to a number of relevant pages. We have a section for current events, which shows all of the active alerts and orders and other active key information as well that we have put out. And you can check the emergency by electoral area in the TNRD as well. Past events are listed below. Now, if you're on our TNRD website, you can go to the bottom of any page and this disclaimer appears. Sign up for the TNRD mailing list. When we change our order and alert statuses, we always accompany that with a press release. If you're signed up for our mailing list, you will receive that in your inbox that way. We do also have a number of other methods for residents to receive crucial information. When you're looking for active order and alerts areas too, a great visual way to do that is to look at our interactive emergency map, which you can access here. You can also type into your browser tnrd.ca/emergency map, and it will take you right to that page. A few other options available, Voyant Alert, which we use for affected order and alert areas and other emergency information, such as for this emergency meeting. We issued a Voyant Alert yesterday, Thursday, August 24th, to let residents know that this was taking place. Also, we have our TNRD official Facebook and Twitter pages where you can find updates as well. We post a lot of information on those pages. So if you're looking for something that might be a few days old, for example, I would recommend if you're either having Voyant Alert where the information would be active or going to our tnrd.ca/emergency site where I just had that page open and showing you how that looks. Please contact, if you're not on the internet, and if you prefer, please continue to call our TNRD EOC 250-377-7188. 250-377-7188. We can help you with general or very specific questions regarding you and your property and recovery as we and support you that way. So please keep that in mind as well and continue to access the TNRD that way. So thank you again to BC Hydro, Ministry of Transportation, and to our TNRD EOC Director and Recovery Manager, Kevin, Dale, respectively. Appreciate you taking the time, and we've had several dozen attendees as well in this call. So thank you for attending. Hopefully you feel better informed. At this juncture, please continue to contact us as well for further information. Obviously, we know what a hard time this is, being on evacuation order. Even if you don't have impacts personally to your property while that order is in place, it's extremely hard to be away from your property for any duration of time for a wildfire or other emergencies. And of course, we know in part because of why we're doing this call is we have a number of residents who have suffered losses in the Adams Lake area. So the TNRD is here to help you with all the information you need and providing you that for how you can access supports and recover. And we'll continue to support you through an extremely challenging time for many residents. But thank you again. And again, please continue to contact the TNRD if you need more information from us during this process. And have a great afternoon.
Thanks all.
Thank you.